Come on in, you guys. We got a brand new episode of Jimmy Rants in store for you here today. JimmyRants.com is the website where we have all the past episodes. But you got to go follow me over on Instagram. That's where the fun begins. I am at Livin' Low Carb Man over on Instagram. LIVINLOWCARBMAN. Once you are there, you can engage live. We also simulcast on my Facebook pages, so thank you guys for being here today as well. If you missed the live, you can watch it for up to 24 hours on Instagram. After 24 hours, it does disappear. So that's where you would go to JimmyRants.com, see the past episodes. We got them all cataloged there for you to watch. 450 episodes, I believe now we have. So it's quite a few. And if you would prefer to watch them on YouTube, we do put them up on YouTube. Although I will tell you, last year they deleted my YouTube account, which is why we created JimmyRants.com. In case YouTube decides just randomly to delete my account like they did last year. So, but for right now, they're still up on YouTube. Type in the keyword Jimmy Rants. You will find the show. So, what I've been doing here lately on Jimmy Rants is providing some information and encouragement and edification and a lot of news stories you might not be hearing about regarding the COVID-19 primarily. I am doing other things besides the coronavirus stuff. But I feel like this is what's on the hearts and minds of people, and I'm an encourager by heart, so I'm trying to provide encouragement and uplifting and positivity for you guys, and a sense of calm in the midst of all the craziness that is out there. And the original thing I wanted to talk about here today was about a U.S. pork plant having to shut down indefinitely, and I'm still going to talk about that, but there's a new wrinkle. I found this yesterday. The vegans are rejoicing that meat shortages are starting to happen. And I'm going to get to that here in a minute. First, I want to read the news story all about Smithfield Foods having to shut down their pork operation indefinitely. So let's get to that story first. This is out of Reuters. Smithfield shutting U.S. pork plant indefinitely, warns of meat shortages in the midst of this coronavirus pandemic. Smithfield Foods is the world's biggest pork processor. On Sunday, they said they had to shut down their U.S. plant indefinitely because they had a rash of coronavirus cases amongst their employees, and they warned the country that they're moving perilously close to the edge in supplies for grocers. In other words, the whole supply chain when it comes to providing food to stores is in trouble. This is why a lot of stores are short on things like bacon, for example. It's about to get worse now that Smithfield Foods is shutting down their biggest plant, which was producing up to 5 to 7% of the entire pork industry products to market. Doesn't sound like a lot, but when you remove that on already short levels of stock and inventory, it really is a big blow. And so, perilously close to the edge was the quote in this story of having no supplies for grocers. Does that bother you? Are you noticing that already? That you go to the store, are they already out of bacon? Are you noticing they're out of other things? I know I've talked about shortages and other things and price increases on previous Jimmy Rants, but this is a big deal. Like if you're into eating bacon and ham and other sources of pork products, what do you think about not having access to those things for a little while? Now, I'm sure some other processors can maybe try to ramp up production to make up for Smithfield Foods, but this is a big announcement. Slaughterhouse shutdowns are disrupting the U.S. food supply chain, crimping availability of meat at retail stores, and leaving farmers without an outlet for their livestock. So I've been talking a lot about this as well. In fact, yesterday I talked about what they're doing in Wyoming to try to give ranchers direct access to be able to sell to consumers, because ranchers traditionally have not been able to sell directly to consumers. They've had to go the retail route. Well, now if you have animals ready to be slaughtered and made into food, but no processors to process said food, what are they supposed to do with those animals now? That's the problem here. Smithfield extended the closure of its Sioux Falls, South Dakota plant after initially saying it would idle temporarily for cleaning. So when they found out some employees had the coronavirus COVID-19, they decided, okay, let's just kind of do a thorough cleaning and get back to work. But then the facility, which is the nation's largest processing facility for pork, representing 4 or 5% of the U.S. pork production, according to the company, they decided that was probably a bad idea, that they need to make sure, obviously, they quarantine the people with COVID-19, but indefinitely. They want to make sure every bit of that plant is cleaned. And of course, everybody would want to know, so they touched food. Is this food that then went out to stores and that maybe are in your refrigerator right now? I don't know the answer to that question. I don't imagine it got past that. Probably what happened was, as soon as they found out that there was positive tests for COVID-19, they probably did a recall immediately before it even went to stores, and had to discard all of that. So again, that was a huge loss to the pork industry as well. And now they're shut down. Another huge loss to the pork industry. This is going to put a strain on those of us who enjoy pork products as part of our keto or carnivore lifestyle, at least here in America. South Dakota Governor Kristi Noem said on Saturday that there were 238 Smithfield employees who had active cases of COVID-19, accounting for 55% of the state's total. So 238 employees had a case of coronavirus COVID-19, and that's over half of the entire state's total. Why didn't they test them long ago? Like, how did it get to be 238 cases? Because it had to start with one. And then did they not do like physical distancing within the plant? And they didn't do like thorough testing, especially if they're touching food that would then go out to consumers. Like, this is disturbing on a lot of levels. Noem and the mayor of Sioux Falls, South Dakota, had recommended that the company shut down the plant. There are 3,700 people who work at that plant, and they're making them shut it down for at least 2 weeks. So the Smithfield Chief Executive Officer Ken Sullivan said in a statement on Sunday, "It is impossible to keep our grocery stores stocked if the plants are not running. These facility closures will also have severe, perhaps disastrous, repercussions for many in the supply chain, first and foremost our nation's livestock farmers." So here's the thing. It's the whole issue I brought up last night on Jimmy Rants. If you missed my 5 p.m. Jimmy Rants about the new Wyoming law, which allows ranchers to sell directly to consumers, go watch that one back on replay on YouTube or at jimmyrants.com. But we got the same situation with pigs now. You got all these ranchers that have these pigs ready to be turned into meat. And now the biggest processor of pork in America says we're shut down indefinitely. So now you have this animal over here ready to be turned into meat for food for people to have. You have this processor that's shut down, but you have all these people that would love to have that food. You see? And I think what's going to happen is you may have some emergency processors step up to try to fill the void, or maybe some of these others that are existing processors could add to what they already do. But I think there's an answer here somewhere in the realm of what we were talking about with that Wyoming law. Smithfield said it would resume operation in Sioux Falls after further direction from local, state, and federal officials. So in other words, they're going to follow the lead of when they're allowed to come back. Now, in the meantime, hopefully they're doing a thorough cleansing of their entire facility. Hopefully all of the employees, the 200-something employees that have COVID-19, can recover from that if they have symptoms, and then they do testing once they come back to prevent it from coming back again. The company said it will pay all their employees the next 2 weeks. And they have been running their plants to supply U.S. consumers during the outbreak. And they said, we have a stark choice as a nation. We're either going to produce food or not, even in the face of COVID-19. So they felt the call. We need to keep our processing plant open because people need to eat at this time. But then look what happened. Their employees got COVID-19. So they could have done a better job, I suppose, of making sure their employees were protected, distanced enough, tested often. If they did all that, then maybe 200-something people would not have gotten this coronavirus. Other major U.S. meat and poultry processors like Tyson Foods, Cargill, and JBS USA have already idled their plants in other states. So guys, there is a meat shortage happening right now. And maybe you've got meat. I know I've posted a little bit about this whenever I've posted about the Jimmy Rants on my social media. And I'll talk about shortages here and there in stores. And people be like, oh no, I go to my store and there's plenty of meat on my shelf. I'm like, now? Right now there is. But what happens when that stock runs out and then it can't be replenished because the supply chain is disrupted by these plants having to shut down? And if you're carnivore right now, it's getting harder and harder and harder. Now, right now, probably not so bad. But what about a month from now? What about 2-3 months from now? Will that same food availability be there? Or do we need to be concerned that maybe we have to shift gears in our nutrition to eat other things, at least until this is over and we can get access to those foods again? Now, I'm going to remind you, local farmers right now in your area probably have food available for you to consume. Go to eatwild.com, try to find a local farmer because these guys probably have food on hand that you could purchase and they're desperate to get consumers to come find them. The grocery store model has been one that people have relied on too heavily. And again, I've said this before as well. If the unintended consequence of this COVID-19 coronavirus pandemic is anything, one of the good things that could come out of this is people finally figure out grocery stores is not where food comes from. Food comes from farmers. And we need to honor those farmers in our local area if you have some. I think all the farmers markets are closed down, but farms are still trying desperately to connect with you, the consumer. There's a lot of them on Facebook. I've seen them. They've reached out to me. Oh, please talk about my farm because I have lots of food and no consumers buying. They will ship directly to your house. And this is a way to support your family, support these families that are making the food, giving you the food that you need. If you got a deep freezer, fill that bad boy up. And that's how we're going to beat these meat shortages as a result of processing plants like Smithfield are dealing with. So, not everybody's upset that the meat is running out in stores. I should not be surprised by anything anymore that comes out of the vegan community. But yesterday I saw this and I just about hurled. PETA, which stands for People Eating Tasty Animals. People for the Ethical Treatment of Animals. I still love people eating tasty animals. They put out a coronavirus update all about the myths and facts about meat and coronavirus. Oh boy, I think you can already see where this is going. Is there a link between meat consumption and the coronavirus? Gee, I wonder what PETA has to say about that. As the outbreak of the novel coronavirus COVID-19 begins to grip the world, more and more people are isolating, quarantining, and wondering just how in the world did we get here? PETA has long warned about the health risks that are associated with eating meat. Yes, they have. After all, raising animals for food in filthy conditions is a breeding ground for all kinds of diseases that can be transmitted to humans. You feel how disgusting this language is? And it's agenda driven. Obviously, PETA is all about getting people to stop eating animals because, we don't want to kill animals, it's murder, and all the same stuff they said before over the years, over and over. But this takes it to a new low, you guys, because now they're trying to tie eating meat to the coronavirus. And get this, check out what they say, because I'm sitting here reading this and going, this reads like an Onion story. It's so much satire-like, but they're serious, guys. They believe all this stuff I'm about to read to you. So, can I get COVID-19 just from eating meat? The World Health Organization says to protect yourself, such as visiting live animal markets, avoid direct contact with animals and surfaces in contact with animals, ensure good food safety practices at all times, handle red meat, milk, and animal organs with the care to avoid contamination of uncooked foods, and avoid consuming raw or undercooked products. So for animals, the environment, and your own health, you must go vegan now as your safest bet against COVID-19. Even after the COVID-19 pandemic subsides. All right, don't get me started on the World Health Organization, and I know our president here in America just decided to pull funding. Guys, you have to know who WHO, World Health Organization, are diehard vegans, like dyed in the wool. They think veganism is everything, that if we all go vegan, the climate change would stop, that health would improve, disease would end, and there would be like the opening up of the skies, like literally. And so they are a dangerous organization. So I'm kind of happy to see that we're not supporting that company anymore. That's not our group anymore. That's not what I'm talking about here today. But it's an interesting aside that PETA is citing the World Health Organization and what they're saying about meat. Well, of course they're going to cite them. They're all about veganism. So is it safe to eat meat during the coronavirus outbreak? PETA wants to educate you. You should stay away from any animal-derived foods at all times for many reasons. You know what I should have done was get me a steak and eat it while I'm reading this. That would have been hilarious. Here are all the reasons why you need to avoid any animal-derived foods. Cruelty to animals. Of course they think that. The meat, egg, and dairy industries damage the planet. Yeah, that's never been proven. The risk of suffering from heart disease, diabetes, cancer, and other ailments. No, that's from eating crappy garbage. The significant risk of contracting foodborne pathogens such as E. coli and salmonella. Never happened like they're saying it happens. Yes, people get sick from those things, but it's not from good quality sources of meat. It's not. The rampant use of antibiotics in animals reared for food around the world, which contributes to the emergence of superbugs and antibiotic resistance in humans. Yeah, if you're eating CAFO meats, but what if you're eating grass-fed meats? They never make that distinction. So they think all those are reasons why you should avoid meat altogether during COVID-19. Is the meat industry responsible for the coronavirus? Here's the juicy part, guys. We simply cannot ignore the link between meat and outbreaks of diseases like COVID-19. Humans have an insatiable demand for meat, eggs, and dairy, and that means huge number of animals are reared in intensive confinement in giant, filthy warehouses. Chickens, cows, pigs, and other animals are all crammed together in small cages, feces-ridden sheds. They're transported in filthy trucks and slaughtered on killing floors, soaked in blood, urine, and bodily fluids. Pathogens flourish in such conditions, and crowded farms are a breeding ground for new strains of dangerous bacteria and viruses. What a bunch of bull. The best people who have looked into the origins of the coronavirus COVID-19 and other coronaviruses like SARS and MERS, it came from bats. And the last time I checked, ain't none of us eating bats. Then those bats can infect some of those Wuhan wet market animals that then get eaten in these delicacies by the super rich in China. That's the theory as to how this came about. We're not talking about eating cows and eating pigs and other sources of the normal sources of food that most people are eating and definitely eating here in America. So to conflate that it's the meat eating in and of itself and that these filthy conditions, quote unquote, of the animals reared for food here in America are the reasons why we have COVID-19 is just utterly ridiculous. But when you have an agenda like PETA has, this is the kind of crap you put out there. Convolute the issue and prey on people's emotions about this. Now, every single vegan person's going to read this from PETA and go, yeah, because that's their worldview. I just can't believe agendas are still being pushed hard. And let me give you another side note about this issue of agendas being pushed. Can I tell you how utterly disgusting it is right now? Especially in the political realm and other realms, where in the midst of this crisis, everybody seems to be using the coronavirus to promote their own agenda. Now, regardless of where you stand on politics or some of these other issues where they're using this, it's just gross. Like, stop. Stop it. Like, we have no reason to use this kind of an incident to promote personal agendas, political agendas, even in the health realm. I talked about it a little bit the other day with the Jolene Brighton story, where they were shaming her because she was a health leader, but she got sick with COVID-19, and people all smug that, see, I didn't get COVID-19 and I'm healthy. And it's like, all of this to promote your own agenda at this time, we got to suspend that kind of stuff. I get it. Everybody still has their life they're trying to live, and they're trying to be who they are. And in the political realm, we do have a political election this year, a presidential election. So they're still trying to get their word out about that and blah, blah, blah. But this is not the issue, and this is not the time to be pushing your own agenda. Okay? We need to get past this. And once we're past this and we get back to some semblance of normalcy, then maybe want to do some of that stuff fine. Although I think some of that stuff is just gross all the time. But it happens. And it's happening right now in full force. So then they say, where did the coronavirus come from? Public health experts believe it originated at a wet market in China, which is true, where vendors sell both live and dead animals for human consumption. COVID-19 is similar to SARS and MERS. All three spread from animals to humans. Again, it didn't come from cows. It didn't come from pigs. That's the major source of most of the meat consumption people are having. And yet they're tying these bats who infected these animals, these exotic animals in the wet markets in Wuhan, China, they're comparing that to pigs and cows. You see how it's apples and oranges, and yet they're trying to say it was the meat that did it. No, PETA, you can't do that. I won't let you do that. Have there been any other diseases that come from eating meat? According to the U.S. Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, 75% of recently emerging infectious diseases affecting people began as diseases in animals. The swine flu linked to pigs killed thousands of people worldwide. Bird flu, avian flu is a disease spread easily on a crowded chicken farm. There are at least 144 different strains of bird flu. H5N1 variety killed the most birds, deadly to humans, killing about 60% of those who catch it. So again, they're using diseases that have happened as a reason why you should not be eating meat. Are the vast majority of animals that are consumed for food infected with some kind of an infectious disease? No. No, they're not. Yet if you read this PETA article about coronavirus, COVID-19, and eating meat, they would make you believe that it is. Hate this, guys. I hate it. So what is the meat industry's role in the emergence of superbugs like COVID-19? In addition to serving as a breeding ground for viruses, the crowded, filthy conditions on farms allow for bacteria to spread quickly. Farmers feed animals on today's farms a regimen of antibiotics to try to minimize sickness or to promote unnatural growth. Not the good farmers. The good farmers don't use that kind of stuff. The only ones that have to use antibiotics are the ones force-feeding grains down the throats of these cows, and then they're having to give them antibiotics because of the infections that come from eating the grains. If the cows are allowed to eat grass, as they are intended to, and to mull on the grass through their various stomachs, and they're producing good microbiome that then gets passed on into the meat, that's a good thing. But they're making it sound like all these cows are being shot up with antibiotics and super duper sick, and then they're sold to consumers who then get the antibiotics and they're resistant to bugs and viruses like COVID-19. You see how they can craft the language to make it sound like what they want it to sound like, but it's so far from the truth. Did you know animals on farms consume more antibiotics every year than humans do? Again, not local farmers who are grass-fed, grass-finished, making their cows. This is another thing that I hope comes out of this COVID-19. We see how messed up the food supply system is. And we begin to go, whoa, I had no idea some of the practices that were going on with CAFO meat, for example. And maybe people turn to their local farmers. How cool would that be? We have a farm revolution come out of this COVID-19 pandemic. I would love to see that. We've been hoping for that for years. We've been looking for a moment that would be paradigm shifting, that would move us into the realm of having people eat more real whole food from local sources. Guys, wouldn't that be a neat kind of after effect of this really horrible time we're going through right now? That people get reconnected to their food in a way that they've never been connected before. I'm hoping that that happens. Bacteria becomes resistant to antibiotics as a result of the overuse. This contributes to the emergence of superbugs, new aggressive pathogens like COVID-19. Now the drugs used to keep animals on farms alive are making humans very sick. So then their bottom line is go vegan. PETA, it's not that simple. But let's pretend like it's that simple. Let's talk to simple-minded people with a simple message and pretend that there's a simple solution to this coronavirus pandemic we're dealing with. And it's not the meat, you guys. They're going to be pushing all kinds of agendas out there in the midst of this. Just keep your eyes wide open. And of course, anything of interest you will get right here on Jimmy Rants. All right, let's see what you guys have to say. We're going to go to Instagram Live here first. We'll come over to Facebook Live here in a minute. Just a reminder to Live in La Vida Low Carb Facebook page. Can't see your comments. I'm not ignoring you. I do look at what you say at the end of the show. But welcome in, you guys. JimmyRants.com is the website if you want to see past episodes of this here show. Bonnie has the first comment. There's been shortages of tests. Maybe that's why there were so many cases. Maybe. Nancy, just FYI, Smithfield Foods was bought out several years ago by WH Group in China. Now that's interesting. Don't know what it means, but it is interesting. Whole Note Casey says ButcherBox has no more chicken. Yeah, a lot of the online suppliers like ButcherBox and other ones, they are running out of different things because of some of these supply chain issues that I talked about here today. Just know that there are local farmers and ranchers desperately trying to connect to you, the consumer. So try to look them up. Again, eatwild.com has a listing of all the ones in your local area. I went there the other day in my local area, and the closest farm that had meat, red meat available was about 150 miles away. So not real convenient for me to drive to. But if I get desperate enough and can't find sources of meat, I will definitely be searching them out. Leanna says, so many regulations to jump through. They need to make it easier to have more small plants there. There is a shortage of small, diverse plants, too many big ones. I agree with you. And I think that there are emergency measures that could be put into place that would allow for these smaller plants to take over and make up the slack for where Smithfield Foods is having to shut down. Nancy says, I'm going to reread Ketotarian. So that's my Real Talk co-host, Dr. Will Cole's book, which is a mostly plant-based diet. But I haven't really looked at like plant shortages. Are you guys out in stores or is there plant shortages? I haven't really seen. I've only been paying attention mostly to the animal-based food sector of the food market. But yeah, so right now I'm pretty much subsiding on my backyard chicken eggs. I'm supplementing it with some butter and some cheese and spices, and then I'm having some of the keto chow shakes, and that's pretty much what I'm living on right now. I'm really quickly running out of money, and so you skimp back as much as you can and try to find local when you can as well. Leanna says, our small butcher locally is backed up now too. Yeah, I bet. She said to plan ahead and own a freezer if you can. Yeah, I have a deep freezer, not a big one, but on my front porch out there that I could fit probably up to a quarter cow in there if I needed to. But yeah, if you don't have a deep freezer, I'm sure Sam's Club or Costco would love to sell you one. Melanie says, I just ordered a whole steer this morning from my local farm. That's great. So if you can get a whole steer, that's supposed to feed a family of 4 for a year. So kudos to you for grabbing that. Kat says, my husband happened to be at Smithfield facility. The level of his disgust was above and beyond. It even stinks from far away. So probably a lack of good practices. I'm not surprised. It is a traditional mainstream slaughterhouse, so to speak, processing plant. So that does not surprise me. Casey says, all my friends are talking about how much healthier we'll be when we don't eat meat. Yeah, I'm sure your soy protein shakes and pasta is so much healthier. I love your sarcasm. That's great. Ilza says, oh my, you don't say. Oh, I say. It's definitely happening. Ilza says, we're still eating meat. And yet the climate and air is healing. Take that. Well, yeah. It's been really interesting. I've been seeing some of the pictures in China, especially, where they've been social distancing. And yeah, a lot of the fog and things in the air that they were blaming on climate change because of meat eat. Miraculously, some of that's cleaning up. So maybe it's not cow farts after all that's leading to climate change. Anyway, a lot of things are being challenged right now of beliefs. Kat says, let's not forget E. coli can come from lettuce. Yeah, lettuce and spinach. There's been all kind of plants that are infected with some of these. So for PETA to make the claim that it's only about eating meat and all these infectious diseases coming from meat is just ridiculous. Cariana says, it's all just zealotry. All zealots think they know the true path. You're right. Ilza says, my food poops on your food. Yes. Yes, it does. You can't fix stupidity, she said. I'm always so blind and deaf when it comes to vegan voices. They're just so ridiculous and aggressive, but love listening to what carnivore people have to say, and I'm not even carnivore. Yeah, a lot of the carnivore people, I mean, there's a few of them that can be on the fringe, but a lot of them are pretty reasonable, and they give good explanations as to why they eat the way they do. The shrillness that comes from a lot of the plant-based community, vegans, vegetarians, you can tell that there's just something not right up there. And that's not all of them, but I'm talking about the major leaders, the John McDougalls of the world. You name it. I could go down the list of all the vegans, but they do seem to have a screw loose or two. Melanie says, no shortage of vegetables at my grocery store. People are buying the junk food. Yeah, that's another thing that's happening, that with all the influence of keto and paleo and carnivore, this coronavirus quarantine has turned people back to junk food again. So where they had let it go, now because it's a cheap commodity for them to buy, to eat, and they want to comfort, it looks like some junk food is making a comeback. And I'm wondering, when all this is over, can they let that go? Now, you and I both know how addictive refined grains and carbohydrates, sugars are. It's going to be a tough road, which I guess is a little bit of job security for people like me, because I've been out here helping people get off crappy garbage for years. But that was not the way I wanted to be continuing my work. Chris says, I think general food shortages will be happening soon. It will be an issue come summer because many of the migrant workers that farmers hire are not able to come in because of this current situation. Maybe. I guess we'll find out here in a few months. And yeah, even when they free us to go back out and live our lives again, whatever the quote new normal will be, it's going to take a while to catch back up with these supply chain things happening. All right, thank you, Instagram Live. We're going to pop over here. Whoa, I look like a ghost on screen. Sorry about that, guys. Pop over here to Facebook Live. Gerard says, no meat shortages here in Michigan. Not yet, Gerard. It's coming. You watch. Joanne said, I read Smithfield is owned by China. Yes, somebody over there said that on Instagram as well. Glad we're already stocked up on ham and bacon. There was plenty at Costco and Kroger last Wednesday. we're good for at least the next 3 weeks. Yeah, if you could pop over to a store now, they probably limit you to no more than a couple of packages now. But if you could get as many as you can, it's probably not a bad idea. Nancy says WH Group is a Chinese company, bought Smithfield out a couple of years ago. It was such a big deal in Virginia. Okay, good to know. Patty says the vegans don't ever talk about all the pesticides and herbicides that are in all the vegetables. Yeah, they don't want you to know about that. So, shh, you're letting their secret out. Norma says, notice how plants shut down after Easter when ham was the main product going out. Yeah, that's true. They did wait till Easter was over. But now it's over and now they're shut down. So that's unfortunately what has happened. All right. So the bottom line here, guys, we've got meat shortages happening. Smithfield Foods, which is like 5% of the pork manufacturing in America, comes from Smithfield Foods. They are closed down indefinitely because they had 200 plus cases of the coronavirus breakout, which is over half of Sioux Falls, South Dakota. Is half of South Dakota's total number of cases of COVID-19 just from this one plant. So they've shut the plant down indefinitely for sure for the next 2 weeks, getting those employees who have COVID-19 quarantined and taken care of, but also trying to thoroughly clean the factory. Because all it would take is just little droplets that would get on food that would then go out to consumers, and all you know what would break loose if in the food supply people start getting this. And you don't want to worry about that when you go to buy food. Which again, I'm going to remind you, find a local farmer. Eatwild.com has a listing of all the local farmers. You put in your zip code and it will find the local farmers that are near you. Now, it may not be right next to you. It may have to be 100, 150 miles away, but you will find farmers that will be somewhat close that are dying to connect to you, the consumer. So go do that. And don't listen to voices like PETA who are telling you that meat is the reason why we have COVID-19. And eating meat now is disastrous for you in the midst of COVID-19. What we know about COVID-19 is you don't want to be inflamed. And eating meat will lower inflammation. You don't want to have high blood pressure or high blood sugar. Again, eating meat in the absence of carbohydrate will do that. And you just want to stay chill and satisfied in your eating. And that's what we're all doing right now. You do those things and keep your cholesterol levels pretty good high. Meat can help with that, high in a good way with your HDL cholesterol. Nothing wrong with eating meat if you can find it. That's the problem right now. That's it for this episode of Jimmy Rants. JimmyRants.com is the website. And as always, pop on over to JimmyRants.com. You can see all of the past episodes, but please follow me here on Instagram. Instagram Live is what we do at 11 a.m. Eastern Time, Monday through Friday. We also do 5 p.m. Eastern Time every once in a while, not every day, but lately it's been every day because I have so much to talk about. We did eliminate the Saturday and Sunday one at 2 o'clock. I needed a break on the weekend so I could be refreshed and recharged to be energetic on camera for you guys every day. So thank you for understanding that Homeboy needs a couple of days off every once in a while. So that's what we do. Livin' Low Carb Man is my username, LivinLowCarbMan. So go follow me over on Instagram and engage in the content. If you missed any of them, pop over to YouTube. You can also check us out there. Type in a keyword, Jimmy Rants. You will find the show. And again, all of these things, you guys, are listed at JimmyRants.com. That's it for now. We'll be back again a little bit later. Thanks for being here. Bye. All right.